quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC TV.
Funding for this program is provided in part by the North Carolina Broadcast Legends Production Fund, including contributions from the following. For a complete list of project funders, go to unctv.org/nclegends.
Welcome to North Carolina Broadcast Legends, featuring industry leaders sharing stories from the rich and significant history of the broadcasting business here in our state. I'm your host, Mike Weeks. James G. Babb is a North Carolina broadcast legend. Growing up in Charlotte in the Dilworth neighborhood, his first media assignment was in 6th grade as a sports writer for the Dilworth Highlights and Headlines school paper. He then covered sports for the Observer while attending Central High School, making 50 cents an hour. At UNC Chapel Hill, he worked in the News Bureau, and after serving in the U.S. Army, he returned to Charlotte, where he was hired as a sports writer by the Charlotte Observer at a salary of $55 a week. When a promotion job at WBTV came available at $65 a week, it was a no-brainer. Jim Babb was on his way to a remarkable broadcast career. He went on to become the president and CEO of Jefferson-Pilot Communications and a director of the Jefferson-Pilot Corporation. He is former chairman, president, and CEO of Outlet Communications, and then became the executive vice president for television at Babb Communications in Charlotte. Jim has held key positions in the broadcasting industry, including chairman of the National Association of Broadcasters Television Board, the chairman of CBS Television Network Affiliates Advisory Board, and the chairman of the board of BMI, to name but a very few. Here in our state, Jim Babb is past president of the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters, a recipient of NCAB's Distinguished Service Award, and a member of the North Carolina Broadcasting Hall of Fame. Jim, welcome to our program.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Mike.
We are so pleased, and we want to start growing up in Charlotte. You know, things kind of fall together, and you started off in the Dilworth neighborhood and attended Dilworth School, and you had some very notable classmates.
We did. I had Dick Spankler, who just recently passed away, unfortunately, who was at Dilworth Elementary School and went on to become president of the University of North Carolina, and a great one for 11 years, and a fabulous human being, a great contributor in so many ways to the great life that we enjoy in North Carolina. And the other one was Irwin Potts, who ended up being chairman and CEO of McClatchy Newspapers. And of course, they own the Charlotte Observer and the Raleigh News and Observer. So actually, Irwin was the CEO at the time they bought the News and Observer. So I had some really great company and great mentors and colleagues growing up in Dilworth.
Those are great classmates, but your first job really was writing and doing some sports stories for the Dilworth paper.
Well, it was. We had a nice little paper called Dilworth Headlines and Headlines, and I was a sports editor there, and that started my fabulous career as a sports journalist. Later, I went to Central High School and was editor of the Rambler, which was one of the top high school newspapers in the country, and later, as you mentioned earlier, I wrote for the Charlotte Observer while in high school and following some while I was in service as well.
And you attended UNC Chapel Hill, and again, your relationships paid off again.
Well, there again, Jack Claiborne, who was been a lifetime friend, was on the Observer staff, and I followed him at the Observer as a sports writer while still in high school. And when I came to Chapel Hill, I roomed with Jack and worked with him in the news bureau at Chapel Hill.
And then you went into the U.S. Army and served your country, and when you came back, you moved back to Charlotte.
I did. And while in the service, I didn't have a very challenging career. I was sports editor for the Fort Jackson Public Information Office and covered sports there, and came back and was on the way to work for the Observer. Ran into another lifetime friend I started Dilworth School with, Julian Massey, who was on the production crew at WBTV back in the early days. And walking down the street, South Tryon Street, the main street in Charlotte, I ran into Julian, and as I was leaving him, he said, "Hey, Jim, I've just thought of something. There's a job open at WBTV. I think you'd be just right for it." So he told me about the job, and I called up and went out and interviewed and ended up working at WBTV instead of going to the Observer.
Wow. Wow. So that was your entry into broadcasting.
Yeah, I've been lucky. You can see I've been lucky every step of the way. I was lucky to grow up in Dilworth. I was lucky to have such great classmates. I was lucky to have such good friends. Running Julian Massey just by chance, 15 seconds before or later, I probably missed him. I'd still probably be writing sports for the Charlotte Observer.
Well, WBTV is what we often refer to as a legacy station.
Yes.
It was the first television station in the state of North Carolina.
Correct.
And as you've told me, some of the most talented people, perhaps in the broadcasting business, work there. Tell us about some of those.
It was an incredible bunch of people, extremely talented, great human beings at the top. We had Betty Feeser, who had a daily show, cooking show. She was an unbelievable woman. Doug Mays was the anchor when I first got there, the SO reporter, ESSO reporter, which was only 15 minutes time. Nelson Benton, who later became an anchor for, reporter for CBS. Clyde McLean, Cloudy McLean, they call him, from Gastonia. Fantastic talent. Arthur Smith and the Crack Jackson. And a little later, Ty Boyd, who came down from Chapel Hill and replaced a legend on air by the name of Grady Cole, who had been the morning man on WBT since the mid-30s. And Ty came down and did a fantastic job. So we just had Pat Lee. We just had a terrific group of people, very talented people. I felt very fortunate to be able to work with them.
So you started in promotion, but soon you decided that there was another job opening within the organization, and you started your move. Tell us just a little bit about that.
Well, I was working for BTV, and then the general manager of WBT Radio, Virgil Buddy Evans, offered me an invitation to come in the radio. So I went in as a radio salesman, a local radio salesman at WBT, and stayed there for a while, and then left for a short while to go into advertising agency business. But after only 6 months there, after quitting my job at Jefferson-Pilot and buying a house, getting married and buying a car, they offered me an opportunity to come back as sales manager. So I did go back as sales manager at WBT Radio. That was in 1960. And later moved up to become general sales manager, and then a few years later moved over to WBTV as a general sales manager there.
And from there, you moved on up.
And from there, I had good fortune. Had a great bunch of colleagues who did wonderful jobs, and so therefore it helped me move up the ladder a little bit. Later ran the production company, Jefferson-Pilot Productions, JP Productions we called it. Later we got the rights to ACC basketball and ACC football. And so from there, after a while, Charles Crutcher, who was the president of the company at that time, asked me to go to Richmond to run a station in Richmond. So I went up there for a relatively short while, came back to WBTV as general sales manager, and then general manager. And in 1988, when Wally Jorgensen retired, I was fortunate enough to be named president of the company.
Wow, what a rise. You told me an interesting story I'd like you to share with people watching about the Jefferson-Pilot Productions. Now, this was the day when insurance companies, one of their favorite investments were radio and television stations, and
Correct.
Your parent company was Jefferson-Pilot, which specialized in insurance policies of different types.
Right.
And so
life and health primarily.
Primarily. And but you were interested in, you were involved in the negotiation for the ACC rights.
Well, we were. Originally, JP Productions started off as a commercial production unit, but we later segued into sports, and we were negotiating for the rights that C.D. Chesley had held for about 30 years at that point. and Chesley was no longer going to hold the rights, and in that, so the rights became open, and we made a presentation. We put together a proposal and we sent it to Greensboro, at least my boss did. Wally Jorgensen sent it up there, and I kept waiting for it to come back, and approval or disapproval. Well, it was now time to go to Greensboro and negotiate the rights, so we went up there and we made a proposal. The proposal was for $18 million for 3 years. The most that had ever been paid for a single season was the year before. That was $2 million, but the most CD had ever paid was $1 million. So in that, we made the proposal, and I went out to see, call Wally. There were no cell phones back in those days, Wally Jorgensen. I said, hey, you know, it's time for us to fish cut bait. So when I go back in the room, I'm going to say this is the deal. So he nodded on the phone, and I went in and made the proposal and came back out, called up and said, we got the deal. So that was the end of it, I thought, for the day. That was a Tuesday before the tournament started in Greensboro on Thursday. And anyhow, the next morning I'm in a breakfast meeting, and I finally go to my room and make a call. Again, no cell phones. And Wally Jorgensen's secretary said, where are you? Everybody's looking for you. I said, what do you mean everybody's looking for me? He said, yeah. I said, you better get over to Jefferson Standard quick. So what had happened is there had been a miscommunication, and the people at Jefferson Standard Life, my bosses there, read in the Greensboro Daily News the next day that Jefferson-Pilot had offered $18 million for 3 years ACC rights. So that was quite a shock to everybody. As it turns out, it worked out fine. We had great success with ACC, of course. It was not hard to have success with ACC back in those days, or today either, for that matter. So that's how the news was broken to my boss in Greensboro, though.
Well, yeah, when they woke up and saw it in the paper and didn't know what had happened, I imagine that was, I'm glad there weren't cell phones then.
That started the great hunt for Jim Babb. Where is Jim Babb? And finally we got together, of course.
While you were at Jefferson-Pilot, you also became involved in a number of broadcast groups and organizations, North Carolina Association of Broadcasters. But in the intro, I mentioned some of the national organizations. WBT was a CBS affiliate. You were chairman of the CBS Affiliate Advisory Board for stations. Mm-hmm. And tell us about some of those. You've had some very interesting assignments.
Well, it was great. CBS, of course, as you mentioned earlier, really a legacy station. I had the good fortune of being there and having the opportunity to manage it. And but it was very big, important to CBS, and so that's what led to my becoming chairman of the affiliate board. There were a lot of big decisions there. One involving North Carolina. CBS was thinking about doing a Sunday morning show, and they were kind enough and gave me the courtesy of telling me about it. And so I recommended two things. One, that they have hired Charles Crawl, who was on the road for them doing the On the Road series, to be the anchor. And they said, well, you know, he's on the road all week. I said, well, bring him in a day early, you know, let him do it. So happily, they did that. And then they were going to start the show at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. And I was in Hawaii at a meeting with other CBS affiliates, and I said, no, that's the wrong time. Many church services in North Carolina don't start till 11, but if you do it at 10 o'clock, there's no way that people can see the show and get to the service too, because it was going to be an hour-and-a-half show. So I encouraged them to run it at 9 o'clock and called up several of the stations in the Southeast while I was in Hawaii over the weekend, and people I knew, and they all agreed with me. So that's how that came about. I think the other major thing came about was several years later. And CBS was thinking about expanding the early evening news from 30 minutes to an hour. And the format that they were talking about doing was that they would only do the hour if there were an important national story or international story. So that the stations could cut out, like at 6:35 p.m. and do their own news, unless there was a big story like the fires in California or whatever it might have been. And so I thought that was a real bad idea. And most of the affiliate board agreed with me. And as a matter of fact, several of the key CBS News people agreed with me. But it was a proposal they were making. A really couple of guys took ownership of it at the network level, and they thought that was the thing to do. But it would have been a nightmare deciding when to cut out, when to stay with the news through the network news. So happily that disappeared, and those were probably the two main events that we had issues I had while I was on the board.
Jim, one interesting fact that I discovered when we got together was about WBT and the fact that when they went on the air, and I think you can tell me the exact date of when they signed on.
WBT Radio?
Yeah, BTTV.
BTV was in July of 1949.
So in 1949, when WBT-TV signed on, there were 1,000 television sets in Charlotte. And the first year that they broadcast, to show you how television took off as a medium, in the city of Charlotte, they sold 500 television sets a week, all year long, 52 weeks the first year they operated.
Yeah, it was quite, it caught on pretty quickly. My family didn't have one for several years, I might add, but so when I wanted to watch something, I remember the first live event on WBTV was a Notre Dame Carolina football game in 1950, in September of 1950. And I remember half of our football team from Central High School went over to the one person on the team, Ralph Petrie, whose father was a physician, and they had a TV set about 12 inches wide, I think, and not much bigger than that, to watch the first live event on WBTV. Wow. So, of course, it took off, and for many years, it was a money loser, and WBT Radio supported the television for quite a while there, and but you know, ultimately the sets became penetrated the marketplace, and people of all sorts of every economic background started buying TV sets, and it took off, as we know, to be the great medium that it is.
Well, and the legacy stations like WBTV, your career didn't stop there. You got into some ownership after you left Jefferson-Pilot. You got involved and were part of a company called Outlet Communications. Tell us about that.
Well, Outlet, one of the divisions we kind of organically grew at Jefferson-Pilot was called Jefferson Data Systems, and we provided inventory control and backroom operation, business operations for the industry. And one of our big clients was Outlet Communication, and they were headquartered in Providence, Rhode Island. And in that, in late 1990, a mutual friend called me up and said that the then president of Outlet, David Henderson, had died of a massive heart attack. Okay. And so obviously that distressed me because he was a friend. So shortly thereafter, about 6 or 7 weeks after that, I got a call asking me if I would help him find somebody to run the company. So I reluctantly agreed to try to help, even though they had a headhunter service at that point. So I did that for a while, and finally, after about the third visit with them and recommended some people, they said they had a better idea. I said, "What's that?" And they said, "We want you to come run the company." So I didn't think it was a great idea at the time, but ultimately I did a couple months later and joined them in May of 1991, and we grew the company slightly and then sold it to NBC in 1996.
And you had 3 NBC affiliates.
We had 3 NBC affiliates,
including the one in Raleigh.
Raleigh we put on the air. The current station, the NBC affiliate, we put that on the air in 1994. So happily, brought me back to North Carolina as well. And
there was a fella in Charlotte that was very interested in you joining their company. And after you left Outlet, you became acquainted with Babb Communications.
I did. I actually had known Cy Babb. We were competitors in Charlotte, and he had very generously offered me opportunities in the past. And in fact, while I was at Outlet, when I refinanced the company in 1993, Cy called me up and wanted to know, it was something in the trade press about it, so he wanted to know how we had done it. So I sent him the roadshow book and all the contacts we'd had, who had bought bonds and that type thing. And so he, but in any event, he suffered a stroke, and his daughter, who was running the company, asked me to come in as a consultant for a while, and I did that. And finally, I joined him on a full-time basis.
Oh, gosh. Well, and back to Charlotte. You keep coming back to Charlotte.
Right.
And that's great. And you've worked at Babb until most recently.
Until just recently, for sure. And it's been a very enjoyable experience. I had a lot of my former colleagues from WBT and WBTV come and join us. Most of the management team, senior management team, we all worked together at Jefferson-Pilot. Almost our entire technical staff came from Charlotte, our news director. So we were able to bring some other people in from outside Jefferson-Pilot, other than from Jefferson-Pilot. But the company's gone very well. We've had a great experience, and I enjoyed the experience very much.
And that's a family-run broadcast group, which is the way broadcast groups and stations started out here in North Carolina and other places, typically. And then insurance companies bought TV stations because of the investment. We see different insurance owners, Liberty, and different insurance companies, just like Jefferson-Pilot. And they had the money to invest premiums from their insured.
Yes.
And but the Babb group continues to be successful today. Tell us just a little bit about their station holdings.
Well, they have WCCB in Charlotte, which is and WOLO, ABC affiliate in Columbia. WXB, a Fox affiliate, Myrtle Beach. Those are in the Carolinas, Carolina cluster as we call it. And they have both an ABC and a CBS station in Montgomery, Alabama, ABC and CBS station in Jackson, Tennessee. Have 4 radio stations in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and 2 in Colorado Springs.
My gosh.
Cy Babb had a great eye for value, and he was buying UHF stations back in the 60s when other people were closing them down. So he developed a very strong, very successful company, and I've had a real privilege of having the opportunity of working for the Babb family.
Well, I know very few people that have your breadth of experience, width of experience, however you want to say that, from running large companies and being on national boards. You're on the Board of BMI, a lot of other accolades, and working all the way up through your 86th birthday.
Yes.
I think that's great. That gives me great hope.
Well, yeah, it's fine. It keeps you young. Keeps you plugged in.
And you're not done. What's next for Jim Babb?
Well, next is more focus on family and community things going forward. I have 5 wonderful children and 3 wonderful in-law children, and 6 grandchildren. Most of them happily are in Charlotte. My 4 daughters live within 5 minutes. My wife Mary Lou and me there. 4 of my 6 grandchildren live in Charlotte. My son and my daughter-in-law live in Old Greenwich, Connecticut, and my 2 youngest grandchildren live there. So my goal is really to get to Connecticut more, to see my grandchildren up there. Spend more time with them, spend more time in activities. Spent a lot more time with my wife doing some traveling. We're looking forward to getting away and doing a few river trips in Europe and elsewhere. So that's my main focus going forward. Hopefully, still involved, interested in the political environment, and hopefully can make a contribution there, not as a candidate, but supporting good people that we need both in Raleigh and Washington.
And Jim, we want to tell everybody that you and I sat down a few weeks ago and did a long and extensive interview that tells a lot of details of your days at WBT, at the Charlotte Observer outlet. And for people that would like to see that, we have that long form interview available online. It's at ncbroadcastlegends.com. That's ncbroadcastlegends.com, and that's on your screen. So if you'd like to know more about Jim Babb and find out more about his fascinating history, please do take a look at that. Jim, we appreciate you being with us today, and wish we had more time. We could talk all afternoon about the things and experiences. And we want to thank you for your story and your part in contributions in broadcasting and many other areas in the great state of North Carolina. Please join us again for another edition of North Carolina Broadcast Legends.
Funding for this program is provided in part by the North Carolina Broadcast Legends Production Fund, including contributions from the following: For a complete list of project funders, go to unctv.org/nclegends.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC TV.